Hello everyone and welcome to a festive edition of Macanori. It's been a weird year for all of us, and on Christmas Eve it's traditional to read ghost stories around a fire. Might be a real fire, might not be a real fire. So what I thought was to thank you all for supporting me this year, and I would read you a ghost story on Christmas Eve that I've written especially for you, and this is called A Christmas Wish. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Except they were. As in the Clark household, no one ever did as they were told. Janie, how many times? But I'm not tired. Since when does that have anything to do with it? Since you're making me go to bed even earlier than normal, Janie said, pattering her feet on the floor in frustration and bunching her small hands into fists, her tiny fingernails digging into her palms, making her eyes water. Waterworks will not wash with me, young lady, not tonight. I've got too much to do. Janie's mum turned and looked down at her hands covered in goo, her brow sweaty. Janie wrinkled her nose at the traditional sacrifice being readied for the following day. I'm not... But she let the sentence hang, the look on her mum's face deciding for her. Now was not the time to break with tradition. I'm not what? Her mum snapped, wiping her sleeve across her forehead, smearing bits of gunk across her face. She shook herself to dislodge them, Chester diving forward to gobble up the unexpected offering, making Janie giggle. Chester was always around to clear up their messes. Answer me when I'm speaking to you, young lady. Janie scrunched up her face as she tried to think of something sensible to say. She's no longer a believer, are you, Janie? And she's too afraid to tell you. Isn't that right, Squirt? I'm too. Don't believe him, Mum. I'll always believe. And don't call me Squirt. I'm taller than I was yesterday. Janie pouted, glaring up at her older brother as he picked at the sacrifice, dodging their mother's swipes. Ben, there'll be nothing left for the rest of us. I'm starving. Well, if you were here on time, you could have dined with us. What, and spoil my enjoyment of tomorrow? He said, winking at Janie as she watched her mum flex her jaw, her face growing red. Can you at least help your sister set things out before she goes to bed? Haven't you done it yet, Squirt? Ben said, poking Janie in the ribs. True believers have everything prepared by now. Stop it, Ben, Janie shouted, pushing his hand away. I am a true believer, and stop calling me Squirt. I don't think you are, Ben teased, dancing around Janie and prodding her. You're too old, you don't believe. You're too old, you don't believe. Mom! Janie wailed as the tears she'd been determined to hold back spilled down her cheeks. Enough, both of you. Can't you see I'm busy? Now, Ben, stop teasing your sister and help her set everything up, please. Fine, whatever, Ben said. Janie, as soon as that's done, bed. Do I make myself clear? But no arguments, bed. Okay. Janie shuffled out of the kitchen, head down, Ben tweaking her ear as she went past before picking her up and throwing her over his shoulder. Have you got everything, Squirt? Don't call me. Janie didn't finish. What was the point? Yes, I've had it ready for ages, she said, glaring at her mum. Not quite, her mum said. You've forgotten the most important thing. She reached into the back of the cupboard and pulled out a bag of white crystals. Salt. How could I forget? Ben muttered, snatching the bag from his mum. Do it properly, please, as I won't have time to check it this year. Yeah, whatever. It's all a myth anyway, he muttered. I heard that, his mum said. Just do it properly, Ben, okay? For Janie. Yeah, okay, he said, and jogged out, Janie giggling as she bounced up and down on his shoulder. Happy? Ben asked. Do you think there's enough room between them? Janie said as she looked at the objects she'd laid out around the fireplace. A hand mirror, a stack of plates and bowls, a dagger, a weight to hang on a set of scales, an abacus, a drinking set, and a tall glass candle holder. What difference does space make? Oh, come on, Ben. Mum said you needed to help me, Janie whined and stamping her foot. I am helping you, but why do inanimate objects need space? Oh, you know why, Ben. They'll need room when they come. You know this. Why do you keep pretending you don't? Janie, one day the truth will become clear to you too, but until that day... Ben adjusted the objects, ensuring ample space between each. Happy now? And they do exist. I'm going to prove it. And how do you plan on doing that? Ben asked as he drizzled the salt in a semicircle around the objects. I don't know. Chester, you shouldn't be in here, Janie wailed as she chased him from the room before he did any damage. I told you to close the door. I did close it. It's not my fault. I'm tired. I'm going to bed, Janie said and stamped upstairs. I'll await your proof, Ben called after her, but Janie slammed her bedroom door without replying. Janie glanced at the clock on her bedside table. 2:57 a.m. Almost time, she thought, and squeezed her eyes shut, rolling her eyeballs around to soothe them before staring back up at the fluorescent stars on her ceiling and beginning her search again. The seventh sign of the zodiac, the scales, her sign, had just revealed itself to her when she felt an almost imperceptible shudder through the house. They're coming! Janie jumped out of bed and raced for the door before stopping and taking a breath. She needed to be quiet if she wanted to see them. She eased her bedroom door open and was halfway across the landing before she remembered. Janie tiptoed back to her room and picked up the hand-me-down mobile phone her mum had given her. Ben wants proof? I'll get him proof, she thought, and crept to the top of the stairs, steadying herself against the wall with each shudder. She glanced towards the closed doors along the landing. How can they sleep through this? Shrugging, Janie rounded the curve in the staircase and saw the glow from the fire as the flames swelled with each thud, her mum's china rattling. Janie counted. 4, 5, 6, 7, and held her breath and waited, crouching down so she could see into the living room through the banisters. Not wanting to miss anything, she positioned her phone and pressed record, not taking her gaze from the scene before her. It was a few minutes before she noticed the fire seemed to take over the room as the flames rose higher before parting to reveal a doorway. Janie clamped her hand over her mouth to suppress a giggle as the first myth, a gate, proved to be real. A gate she knew, which led from somewhere, not to somewhere. Janie was scared to blink in case she missed anything, her eyeballs dry and sore from the heat as she watched and waited. Her concentration was such that she almost screamed at the scratching sound on the wooden floor and watched the mirrors slide towards the doorway before levitating and morphing into a translucent figure. Lucifer, she whispered as the apparition assumed his position facing the doorway. Beelzebub, Janie murmured as the tableware transformed and Beelzebub took his place beside Lucifer. As each object changed, Janie whispered their name: Leviathan, Mammon, Belphegor, Asmodeus. She held her breath as the final object rose from the floor, but instead of transforming as the others had, it hung in midair before turning itself around. Janie gasped and pushed away from the banister, her head cracking against the wall behind her, causing her to bite her tongue, bringing tears to her eyes. The dagger was pointing at her. She glanced towards her bedroom, contemplating burying herself under her duvet until it was all over, but her body wouldn't comply. In defeat, she turned her attention back to the fireplace, where the final apparition stood watching her, a crooked smile on his skeletal face. Satan, she breathed. The one and only, he said, spreading his arms wide. And I believe my brothers and I have you to thank for our freedom this Christmas morn. He doffed his non-existent hat to her. But you come every year, Janie said, frowning at his comment. Yes, indeed we do, but this year it's a little different, and it's all thanks to you. Why? What did I do? Janie said, her heart thundering in her chest. It's more a case of what you didn't do. Janie followed his translucent hand as it indicated the door through to the dining room, now firmly closed. If it wasn't for your faux pas, my faithful Cerberus wouldn't have been able to break the impassable barrier. Janie again followed Satan's hand as he indicated the broken line of salt, and she felt sick, a weight settling in her chest. This was bad. She didn't know why, she just knew that it was. Her mum was fanatical about the salt line, and when her mum was obsessed with something, it was for a very good reason. Satan clicked his fingers and the living room door opened. Chester, Janie cried, but the sound died on her lips as she watched her best friend sit at Satan's feet, not acknowledging her presence. She licked her dry lips, her mouth agape as she glanced back at the broken line of salt. I don't understand, she said, looking up at Satan, to find all 7 of them watching her. You will, One day he said, "I'd like to stay and chat, but your parents will awaken soon to begin your day. We have our own gifts to bestow." "Like what?" Janie managed. "Let's just say it's time this world remembered there are consequences to temptation. They're called deadly sins for a reason." Janie stared as one by one the 7 princes of hell, who she'd released through the hell gate, crossed the line of salt, becoming corporeal as they did so before clicking their fingers and vanishing. "So, did you get your proof?" Ben yawned an hour later as he almost tripped over Janie, who was asleep at the top of the stairs, Chester by her side. And there you have it, a ghost story for Christmas Eve, especially for you. So, don't forget to put your salt circle around your fireplace, because you never know who's going to come down that chimney. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you soon.